Hello and welcome to this training video in regard to the self-upload of productions with load files. This process is only available to account admin level users and power users. If your user permission is lower than this, you will need to speak with your account administrator before you can proceed with the next steps. But for account and administrative power users, we're going to discuss the process now of uploading your production load files into your case. So what is a production with load files? Productions with production load files are folders that contain all of the necessary parts, what we call subfolders, needed to upload and process the incoming production properly. This ensures that all documents and the metadata provided with those documents is loaded into the Lexbe platform to reconstruct the production exactly as it was provided. And in this training session, we're going to look at what the folder structure looks like, how to identify those, and then how to move forward with the upload, which is a simple process once you've done some preliminary QC steps. So the first thing you need to know that if the production that you have received was received within a zip file, you must first unzip that file before proceeding to any of the additional steps. Once you've unzipped the production load file that you've received, you should see something that looks similar to one of these four examples. You're going to see a series of folders that are typically either named load files, originals, PDF or text. Sometimes load files can also be referred to as data files. Originals can sometimes be referred to as natives. And typically your PDF folder will either be identified as a PDF or a native file. And so basically what this is your load files or your data files include the two files that are necessary to upload the data into the system. And we'll look at that more closely here in a moment. Your originals or your natives contain any of the original or native versions of documents that the party produced in addition to the PDF produced documents. And of course, the PDF is your PDF produced documents. In some productions, you receive what are called TIFF productions. In TIFF productions, you will not see a PDF folder. You will see something that's typically will say images. And these images contain the TIFF images associated with those documents. And finally, typically you will always see the text file. The only occasion where you might see the text file listed as something different is if it's listed as an OCR file. This text file, it contains the actual text OCR'd of the information that's being produced. That is what makes your document searchable and is being provided by the other side. So again, we're looking at load files, originals, PDF, and text. Typically, you're going to see something in this regard. The first thing and the main QC that you need to check is that if your production contains the following two files, your productions, in order to be uploaded into Lexbe, must contain a DAT file and an OPT file. Now the DAT file and the OPT file each do specific things that put the documents back together in order. The OPT file is basically the mapping folder that takes all of the documents that are within those various folders and puts them together the way they should be created. The DAT file contains the metadata overlay for the documents being produced. Metadata typically contains things such as the dates of the documents, the base references of the documents, to, from, CC, those typical metadata fields that you would get in an incoming production. So let's go back up to this folder. So what you need to do first is to open the load files folder and ensure that there is a .opt and a .dat file, a .dat, and you will see that either in the load files or the data. Now, one thing to keep in mind is occasionally, depending on who produced the documents and what system those documents were produced out of, you may receive productions where your .dat and your .opt file are sitting out by themselves and not in a folder for load files or data. If you have a production where you see the DAT file or the OPT file sitting outside of one of these folders that we've identified here, create a folder called load files and take those DAT and .op and paste those directly into the load files folder, or copy those directly into the load files folder. You do not need to leave them out. The point is that they need to be put inside of a folder in order to get the folder structure going. So we're going to see in a moment, as I turn into the live system, exactly what we're going to do as far as processing these documents. In short, the first step is the uploading process. which we've just discussed, and the pre-QC. The second will be allowing the system to process the data so that everything is uploaded properly. The third step will be to validate that everything was uploaded properly. We call this the validation step, but you can refer to it as the QC step. This is the step that ensures that everything that was in the production has been uploaded up to this point. And finally, the last step with uploading production load file is taking the DAT file and mapping the metadata overlay to the documents. And we're going to look at all of that in detail in just a moment. So let's do this. Let's turn our attention now to the case. So here we have this case that I'm currently in. This is just a testing case in the account. This could be your case. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of uploading a production that we've received from the other side. So first, let's look at the production that was received. And I have one pulled up here. Let me open this a little wider for your view. So we can see that when I look in the production load file and I look in the final production, I see that this load file came with my load files folder, my originals, my PDF, and my text. So I have everything that I need so far to upload properly. The next step is for me to open the load files folder to check to make sure that the .dat and .opt file are present. And as we can see here, here's the .opt and the .dat file is present. If you have any other additional files in here, you can disregard those. The important thing to know is that there must be a .dat and a .opt. So now that we've looked and we've pulled up our data and we know this is the data that we're going to load into the case, let's now go through the process of uploading this production. So I'm going to minimize this. We're going to go to Case, Add Case Documents. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the New Upload button. When we click on the New Upload button, you will see that you will be able to choose your file location. The majority of you will be clicking on Local Computer. That is where you are going to pull the data from to put it up into the system. The Clio, you can disregard that unless your firm actually uses a Clio-based software, which is just a document software that some law firms use, and we have the ability to take documents directly from that software and upload them into Lexbe. But for our intents and purposes here today, we're going to click Local Computer. Now the next step is very important, so remember this step. You will see that the system is asking you here what type of files that you're going to be loading into your case, either native files or processed files. Load file productions are processed files. You must click Process to proceed in order to upload the data properly. If you click the native folder, you will need to start over again because the system will not work with that because that is a different set of uploading principles there. Okay, that's when you're uploading native data. So we're going to click Processed, and now we're to the screen that most of us are used to seeing when we're uploading documents into the system. We have our batch title, our document source, universal time code, and custodian. So we're going to say this is Acme First Production, and we'll just call the doc source Acme Productions. And we will not be assigning a custodian or changing the time zone offset at this point, simply because that will have been provided with your production. Typically when people produce, they will provide their own custodians that will be uploaded at a later time. So as we can see here, we're ready to proceed with uploading our data. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click Next. Once we click Next, you see you have a singular option here, and that is to select the production folder. That's how we're going to put this data into the system. So we're going to click Select Production Folder, and I'm going to go locate that production that I already have. So we see here's production, and I want to take this folder here that contains the load files, originals, PDF, and text, and I'm going to simply click Upload. We're going to upload, and it will you see the system is telling us and confirming that it did find an OPT and it did find a DAT file. That's all good news. So we're just going to now click Upload Files. Now, as you can see, this upload window is uploading the data right now. It says upload is complete, and so we are able to close this window. Now, as you can see now, we have our Acme's First Production that has been uploaded. Processing was very quick on this particular upload simply because for purposes of this example, we used a very small production set so that you would not have to wait for processing. Just keep in mind, the larger the production that you're uploading into the system, the longer it will take for it to process. If you ever want to know how long it's going to take or be notified once processing has completed, again, in your prior sessions, you should have learned that up here, you will see this icon that looks like a bell. If there's a red dot in this bell, it means processing is currently taking place. You can click on the bell to see what type of processing is going on, and you can also click within the notification so that you will receive an email as soon as processing has been finished. In this case, processing is finished. So now is when we move to the step of QC to make sure that everything loaded properly. And that's what we call the validation stage. And you'll notice here with Acme's first production that to the far right-hand side, you will see under validation stage, validate. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click validate. The system's going to make sure that everything's good. We're going to click OK. The platform is now validating, looking at everything that was uploaded into the database to make sure that everything uploaded properly. And if everything uploaded properly, then you're going to see passed right here, which means we can move on to our final step now in completing the production upload. If you received a failed notification, then there must have been something wrong with the production. You should either try again, or that may be a good time to reach out to professional services and ask us for assistance in overcoming whatever the issue is with the production that you have received. But in this case, we have passed. So now what we want to do is go to the final step, which is applying the metadata overlay that came in with the documents. In order to complete this final step, we're going to go to the far right-hand side of the upload batch, and we're going to see these three vertical dots. We're going to click on these three vertical dots, and you're going to see the bottom option is to view DAT file mapping page. And again, this goes back to the DAT file that we were going to upload. So we're going to click on view DAT file mapping page. Now, the system is now showing us everything that has been provided in the way of metadata from the production itself. And it's also telling us exactly where that information will be placed within the appropriate fields, such as to, from, CC, BCC, date fields. And so what we want to do is we want to take a close look at this so you understand what you're seeing here. So the first thing I want you to note is that beginning from anything from BegDoc related to Bates, parent ID, InBates, attachment, parent ID, any of these fields that you see here, you should never need to change those. Okay, so however it says it here, if it says ignore, don't change that. Bates title, leave those as is. Okay, that's related specifically to the Bates information. All right, what we want to do is we want to go down now and see what data they've provided and what fields that we have to put that data in. In most cases, the system is going to recognize whatever they have provided and tell you the type of field and the name of the field that that data will go into in Lexbe. So as you can see here in their metadata, they provide what they call the record type, which we call the doc type. The doc type, as you can see here, the system is showing you examples of the doc types that it has found inside the production that was uploaded. These are examples so you've got a better feel of what's being added. So we can see here that the system has identified record type as doc type, and when we complete our overlay, it will take all of the information about the various doc types and put those into the fields where appropriate. Now, as we move down, we will see things such as date sent or time sent. One of the things you're going to notice here is that sometimes in some productions, they produce documents where they have one field that contains the actual date that the information was sent, and they have a secondary field that shows the time that was actually sent on that day. And in other instances, you may see the date and the time concatenated together in one row. If it's in separate rows, you see how the system has identified date sent and time sent as needing to go into our date sent fields inside the system. Okay, so we do not have to change these. So you'll see that date sent and date sent, the system knows to take the date and the time and put those together. The same thing with date received. You see in this particular production, they have provided us with the date received and the time received. The Lexbe platform has identified that this is information that should go into the date received fields within the system. As we continue to scroll down, we have our from that goes into the from, our to into the to, keeping in mind that we have examples that the system is showing us here from where it's pulled in. BCC, it does recognize those, but as you can see, there are no documents that have been produced in this set of documents that actually contains any information into the BCC field, but you can just leave that as is. It's just going to stay blank. Here's the subject going to the subject, the author going into the author. Now, you start to run into fields towards the end that may or may not have associated fields within Lexbe, or you may want to change those and put those into another field. For example, you see last modified by. This is not something that we typically put automatically into the system as information. So you see the system has set it to ignore. Unless this is something that you absolutely need, which typically it is not, you can change this from ignored and select a field that you want that information to go into. It's also important to note that if you see information here that says ignored and you do not see any available field that would work for that information, you can create your own custom field from within this system. Just simply click the plus, and you'll be familiar with this, where you can either add a new metadata section under a tag under a section that's already been created, or you can create your own. Once you've done that, then you can change this to go to that specific metadata field. But as we go through and we look, date created, everything's there. Date last modified, everything's there. Now here's one that you typically need to pay close attention to. Many times the producing party will provide the original titles to the documents. Sometimes they call them original files, sometimes they call them file names, but nonetheless you can tell that these are the original titles of the documents, as the system is giving you examples of those. So in this case, the system did not recognize file name, but I know that the file name is the original title. So I'm going to change ignore, and I'm going to go down here until I find original title. And now I'm telling the system to take the information that's in the file name and place it into my original title metadata field here in the system. As we continue to go down, we see file extension, it's picked up extension. Pages we can ignore, volumes typically people will ignore. These original source file paths, text file paths, PDF file paths, these are things that typically you can ignore that just come in with the metadata that are more or less non-substantive as far as information. So if you have any questions, reach out to us and ask us. You can always update this later, but typically you're going to ignore these. You're really only going to focus on those fields that contain probative value or information to them. And as we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see here's the custodian. As I said, they typically provide the custodian. You can see the examples of the names of the custodians. MD5 hash, we're going to ignore that. Threading, we're going to ignore that. So once we've looked at the information to make sure everything is exactly as we want it and that it matches, we're simply going to go over here to save and apply. And when we click save and apply, the system is going to begin processing. As you can see now, that bell icon had the red dot in it. If I click on it, you'll see that it's finished processing. But what the system has done now, it's updated the information so that all of the metadata fields are present. So now finally we want to confirm, just do a spot check to make sure that everything uploaded properly and all the information is in the metadata fields that we wanted. So we can just simply browse the upload. Here's the information, and we can already see clearly here that information has gone in, because here's the title of the document. This was a PDF, and this was the date of the document, and we can see that everything is loaded. If I open this document now and I look at the metadata, I should see my Bates information, where the document came from, who the custodian was, here's the source file path, the author. All of that information we were just looking at is now available within the document as expected. And one last quick check could be simply just to check your layout, click select field, pick one of those custom fields that you created. In this case, remember, we added the original title field in, so I'm going to add that into my layout, and I'm going to click OK. And now we can see that the original title is here. So everything uploaded properly. We were able to get everything into the system and able to get everything uploaded without any issues because everything was present. So now let's kind of go back and just recap what we've done. We've looked at our production. We've verified that everything was done. We've clicked new upload to upload the new production. We've allowed that production to process. We've then validated to ensure that everything uploaded. And finally, we added our DAT file and our metadata based on what was received with the production itself. And so now we're good to go. So let's go back to the training slides for just a moment and take one last look at best practices to keep in mind when you're working with production load files. Again, always make sure that the folders needed are present, as we've looked at before, those native folders, data folders, originals, PDFs. Create a folder for the DAT and OPT if they are not already in a folder. Also keep in mind that if the production is over 100 gigabytes in size, that you may need to reach out to professional services for best practices, because those get to be rather large, especially depending on the type of connection that you have and your upload speeds at your location. The first time you do this step, the first time you've uploaded and you've reviewed this particular video, it would be very important for you to also pull up the help page related to this topic, because our help page goes into great detail with examples and illustrations that will help you do this. And the important thing to keep in mind is that once you've done a production or two and you've uploaded them, this stuff will become more second nature to you, and you'll just be able to go in and upload them quickly because you'll know what you're doing and what you're looking for. Okay? And of course, always remember to spot check all of your data after the steps are completed. And by all means, if you get stuck in any way, do not hesitate to reach out to professional services for help. Typically, we can provide a quick response and help to identify whatever the issue may be with your upload and help you proceed so that you don't have to stay stuck looking around for those. So again, I want to thank you for attending today's session. And as one last reminder, we are going to go back to the system platform here, and I want to pull up the help page is located when you're on the add case pages. The help page is located by clicking the name of the case and clicking help, and the help for the upload for both native and production uploads will be available to you. Again, thank you for attending today, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future.